Give me a minute. I gotta switch some stuff around. Switch more stuff around. And we should be on the main screen, correct?
We are looking good. Yes. So good morning to everyone. Thanks for joining us today. If you don't know me, my name is Sam Bowers. I'm the consultant for continuing education here at the State Library of Iowa, and I am joined by my fabulous colleague here in the Central District, Mary Ann Morey, who's going to be taking us through this third part of Buy Better Books. And this one, a little misleading, not actually about buying books, but about promoting the books you did buy. So Mary Ann, I will let you take us through. Thank you so much.
And Sam, I didn't see that you hit the recording, did you?
We are recording.
Okay, well, let's go on. And as Sam said, we're talking about promoting your collection. For the most part, I'm going to be focusing on your print collection, as in books, hence buy better books. But realize that for many of these recommendations and tips that I'm giving you, you can use these in all aspects of your collection, like your cake pans, your library of things, your movies, and your digital collections. But as I said, for the most part, I'll be focusing on print books. So this is, as Sam said, the third in our series. The first two were recorded and have already been posted in Iowa Learns, our learning management system, and to our YouTube channel. So access those if you need a good review. Part one did a really good groundwork of collection development basics, as well as talked about purchasing fiction. Last week, we talked about purchasing nonfiction. Today, promoting collection, and still there's a fourth part next week. More about that later. Today, you can see that we are going to be moving on from talking about displays to newsletters to book talks to shelving and more, plus talking briefly about how to recruit active card users. All of this is about promoting your collection. I always like to do definitions so we know exactly what it is we're talking about. And Oxford Languages Dictionary defines promotion as an activity that supports or provides active encouragement for the furtherance of something and the publication of a product organization so as to increase sales, or in our case today, circulation or public awareness. Now, we sometimes call this marketing as well. Sometimes it's really tempting to think that this is something that only businesses do, retailers do it because, hey, their budgets depend on it, right? They promote sales, they market their next big product line. But notice that this definition says promotions encourage furtherance of a cause and is designed to increase public awareness. So while we're not selling things at our library, we are trying to make sure that our communities are aware of all the great resources and services we offer. Because there's no direct fee to the use of our libraries, that's even more reason for us to promote what we have. I just want to note that free use of library resources does not mean that our libraries are free to operate. See our endorsement class about free libraries aren't free if you need more information about how library budgets work. So I think that in most of our public libraries, we do a pretty good, like at least mediocre to highly visible job of promoting our programs. And these are some examples I just got offline. We do a pretty good job of promoting programs, but when it comes to our collections, we are not nearly as creative or persistent. So I want you to put in the chat some of the ways that you promote your library's physical collection. Short of putting up a flashing neon sign to encourage members of your community to read, what do you currently do to promote your library's collection? Just put that in the chat, and I'm going to have Sam read some of those comments because she can see them easier than I can.
Sure. I got to scroll down to the bottom. I'm looking at names. Let's see. Displays. Oh, staff reviews. New books on top of the catalog. I'm assuming like on top of the stacks. Monthly new book lists in the local paper. I love that one. Social media. An email newsletter.
Okay.
Oh yeah, someone tying it to National Fill in the Blank
Oh, yeah.
Month.
Yeah. Great.
They've got a slideshow with new collection titles. People love the staff displays, Angie says. Ooh, we got a mention of Wowbrary.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Yep.
Okay,
Oh my
great.
goodness, these are coming in faster than I can read
So
them.
you are already doing a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, but don't leave because I think we're going to have some new ideas to add to or to complement what you might already be doing. So hang on. As I said, we're notorious about promoting what we are not notorious. We are notorious about not promoting. Sorry, get my words in the correct order here. About not promoting what we have at our libraries, and this fact is actually evidenced in national surveys that have been conducted. And in fact, when I can facilitate strategic planning sessions for the libraries in my district here in Central District, and when I'm interviewing community members, whether that's for a planning session or a focus group, over and over, what I hear from community members is, I wish my library would communicate better, or I wish they'd promote, they actually use that word, promote what they're doing at our library, or I wish the library would do a better job of letting us know what they have available. And OCLC released its Marketing and Communications Landscape Report in 2018. Now, that was a few years ago, but it's not so many that this information is not still relevant. You can see the URL here on the slide, so you can access this and read through it, but I've given a primary highlight here. According to this research, nearly 60% of libraries did not have a communications or marketing strategy. And out of the 40% of the libraries that did have such a strategy, 17% of them were out of date. So that's not a very good track record. And I want to know about you. We have a poll. And Sam, can you pull that up? We have a
I
poll.
should be able to. Just a moment.
I want to know if your library has some kind of marketing or promotional or communication plan. You might call it by various names, but is it basically a marketing plan? Do you have one? And the numbers are coming in. It looks like
Ooh,
no is
no
edge
is
to the front.
starting to edge ahead. Yeah.
Now, one thing I couldn't get my poll to work today, it wouldn't accept more than 4 responses. But one of the
Oh.
responses I thought about putting was yes, but it's out of date, or
Oh.
yes, but I don't know where it's located kind of answer. So if that's you, then maybe you can just put, we're working on it.
Yeah. Looks like we've got no is definitely has the highest percentage of answers there. But we do have a fair number of people that say they have one and they use it. So
Right.
that is
So 30%
encouraging.
of you have one and use it. So we may want to hear you chime in from time to time about well, did we share the results with everybody?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm stopping the share on that.
Mhm.
And we're going on to the next thing here. I'm going to be quoting from this person quite a bit because she's really, really good at what she does. Angela Hirsch. She's part of Marketing at Novelist, which is a favorite database of many public librarians, and she's former content marketing team leader at the Cincinnati Public Library. She has a website. She is known as superlibrarymarketing.com. And she writes this: marketing is promotion. Libraries have to promote themselves. Many library staffers make assumptions that the community knows what they do in the library, but I am certain your community does not know the full extent of your impact. And she believes that the very existence of our libraries depend on marketing. She adds this: when I worked for a large metropolitan public library system, my department was often met with skepticism or wary looks for librarians. Most staffers wanted me to promote their programs and events, what we mentioned earlier, but many told me they felt, quote, weird or icky about promoting the non-program library work like the collection or summer reading or homework help or online resources. Very interesting. That was what she discovered working in a large metropolitan library system. I think it's actually foolhardy to believe that the simple free books concept of public libraries is going to be enough to entice today's readers or potential readers into your library, because sadly, many people think of this, what this picture is, when they think of the library's free books. And this could be because of stereotypical views that libraries are old and outdated, or sadly, it could be because this picture is only a slight exaggeration of what some public libraries actually do have on their shelves: old, tattered, yellowed, torn, outdated books. I talked about this kind of discouragement in the second session of this series, so access recording number 2 if you need information about that. Hopefully what you have at your library is a fresh, new, vibrant array of titles, and it's a variety that's sure to have something to please everyone. If you don't have a collection like that, go back and watch the first 2 sessions of this Buy Better Books series and talk with your state library district consultant for help. So assuming you have a fresh, new, vibrant array of titles, how do you let the public know about them? Many of you said you utilize displays. Well, beyond that, how do you get people to actually pick up those books and check them out and hopefully actually read them? Does your community, do they know that your library carries the latest and greatest bestsellers? This is where promotion comes into play. I want to just briefly talk about these 3 new display things that we see here on the slide. The one on the left, the round one, it's good, although I question how is it any different from other displays in the library? I really don't notice the new aspect. There's that little sign at the top that says, I think, bestsellers and popular books. So that's kind of like their new area. I don't think it's eye-catching enough. It is nice to notice that they do have multiple copies of some of the titles, though. This one in the lower right, it's fairly eye-catching as long as I look up at the ceiling to see the new nonfiction signage. The books lined up across the top are very eye-catching, but I seriously doubt if I could reach them. I'm not super tall, but I'm not super short either. I'm like average height. I don't think I could reach those books up there. The rest of the shelves in that display are way too full for me to see what's up there. And finally, the top right picture, that's probably the best of the 3. The signage is big, it's eye-catching, it's interesting. The top row has front-facing books, and it doesn't appear to be too tall for the average person to reach them. The shelves are not jam-packed, and the display has a nice interruption there in the center with some front-facing books, kind of jazzing up an otherwise straight, normal library shelf. So we'll talk a little bit more about shelving in just a while here. As far as displays, I want to talk about the pros and the cons of this because displays are probably the most basic way that you are promoting your collection. So the pros of having book displays is that you probably already have a space where you do this and you already have your books right there at the library, right? So it's pretty easy to do. It is a fairly easy thing to do. You just get your books and you set them out and you're done. You are also able to attract the people who are already coming into your library. But the cons are maybe you don't have the best space because your library is super small or it's super crowded. And maybe you're actually cluttering the space that you're using for displays. It can also be a time-consuming thing. It's easy to set the books out, but it can be time-consuming to think about, okay, I want to do a display about gardening. I have to do a search in my computer for gardening books. I have to gather them. I have to make sure I have extras to put out when people choose them. It's very time-consuming, especially for our libraries that have a solo librarian. The other con is exactly what was a pro. You are only attracting the people who are already coming into your library. And so our goal in this session today is how can you attract people that are outside your library that haven't yet come in? David Vinjamuri, who is of Third Way Marketing and a space use consultant that the State Library has brought in as a special presenter, he often refers to displays as visual merchandising, and that's not an original thought, as I'll explain in a moment. Part of that visual merchandising includes what he calls the rule of 3. And again, that's not his idea. That comes from Anythink libraries in Colorado. So what is the rule of 3? It means you put displays in groupings of 3 or maybe 5, but no more than that. The odd number lets you highlight a center book. 3 is supposedly, quote, the magic number. And those of you that are old enough to remember Schoolhouse Rock will nod your head to that statement. As David explains it, there has been actual research on this, that the rule of 3 has evidence that it actually works because uneven numbers are more interesting and people tend to remember things best in sets of 3. Anythink Library, who developed this rule of 3 concept for libraries, has an entire merchandising guideline PDF readily available for you to view. And they have this whole list here of things that they require their visual merchandising to employ at least 2 of those simple design principles. And those design principles, I'll just briefly run through them, include balance, which means not too heavy on one side, Emphasis, incorporating the same colors or repetition of designs, proportion and scale, which means things can be noticed from far away, as well as intimate display vignettes that borrowers can discover by surprise. Rhythm, that's continuity, progression, alliteration, or word titles that spell out a phrase when arranged together. Harmony, titles and product colors that harmonize a theme, such as a theme of winter books where all the book jackets are white like snow. And finally, rule of three, because human beings tend to think of things in triplets. I'm not going to go into any more detail on this because you can download and read that entire merchandising guideline PDF yourself, because you will have access to these slides and URLs after our presentation. In a blog featured on Knowledge Quest, the online journal of the American Association of School Librarians, Ashley Cooksey offers these suggestions for creative book displays without wall space or with very little space. She talks about doing front facing. I think we all know that's when the cover of the book is looking at the viewer, at your patrons. If your shelves are too short, put a few display, or sorry, if your shelving is short enough, put displays on top of your shelves. But I have to say, be careful of not cluttering it. Oftentimes when I go into libraries and they have the shorter shelves so they can put stuff on top, it just looks cluttery. And if your shelves are super tall, you don't want to put books way up on the top on display because nobody can reach them. Perhaps consider adjusting your shelves. If you can replace a flat shelf within your entire shelving unit with a slanted shelf, like the kind that we normally think of as being for library magazine displays, then do so and put some front-facing titles there. Definitely post pictures of your displays on social media and create digital displays. And more about that in an upcoming slide. This is coming from that same website. She says use a book cart when you don't have a shelf or other display space. And she also has a Pinterest page that features book displays for small libraries, so you might want to check that out. Now, not all of the display samples I have here are following the rule of three, but I think you'll still find some other visual marketing guidelines noted. This one is titled Face Books, and it has books that have faces on them. So it's a play on that ubiquitous social media site, as well as books that all have a face of somebody on the cover. My thoughts about this, it's attractive and original, but it's really low down. I'm not sure I would notice it. It seems to be on lower shelves. And I also think this would take quite a bit of time to create because I don't think you can search in your catalog specifically for books with faces on the jackets. So you'd have to really think about some titles to do something like this. The display on the left here, the bluish one with the snowflakes, that is utilizing the rule of three, but because the books are so spread out, we don't really notice the groupings. I think bring those threes a little bit closer together and consider breaking up the vertical symmetry by making it a little more interesting. Maybe do a group of 5 on the second shelf. The display on the right is very eye-catching, even from a distance because of the bright color. You can see the rule of three implemented there on the second shelf. And I like how this display is broken up by adding the fire logs on the bottom shelf, although I think a little more color behind those fire logs would have made them stand out a little more. This display on the left is incorporating cover color. When I managed a large department and a large library system, we found that this was one of the easiest ways to make displays. We had a lot of end caps in this very big department, and we had spent so much time trying to do searches in the catalog to come up with thematic things and put them on display, and nobody would check them out. And one time we were desperate, running out of time, and I said, let's just put out some colors, yellow, blue, red, each end cap will be a different color. And we just walked the aisles and pulled titles that had that color up predominantly on the cover and put them on the end caps as displays, and the stuff checked out like crazy. So we almost regularly just did that. So you might be surprised what you can get out of a display that only focuses on color. The live from the bottom shelf, the one there in the center, is a way to promote circulation of titles that are overlooked. I would say that if your library is large enough, you probably don't even want to keep books on the bottom shelves, the very bottom shelves. But other than that, this display is, I have to note that it's on a small book truck, so it's not very big, but it's still eye-catching because it has twinkle lights, and who doesn't like twinkle lights? The Never Been Kissed display is a way to highlight books that haven't, but probably should have, circulated. So if you're thinking about withdrawing some titles, but you just know they're really good books, try this trick to get them out the door a few times. You could also do a rescue us from the morgue kind of display. This Never Been Kissed display, I think, would have benefited from the rule of three concept, although at least they did utilize 3 rows and they have a focal point on the front center. This was kind of interesting, and I tossed it in here because it was so interesting. Reddit featured this post about staff anti-pics. This was a display from a library. I'm not sure I would completely recommend going this route for your library display, but I think that these librarians definitely deserve a big E for effort, maybe a C for creativity, or a B for brave. The display pairs nicely with this Peabody Institute Library's official blog about books we hate, which included the title, the photo of the book, and a full explanation about why the book was so disliked. So if you want to be bold and put out books that we really didn't like these, what did you think? This could be a real attention getter, I think. Be careful of creating cute book displays that discourage taking any of the books. For instance, who is going to be bold enough to grab that Atkins title there from the snowman? Hopefully this display was made with withdrawn titles. But again, just be careful that when you create your display, it's not so creative that people are afraid to touch it. Let's move on to newsletters now. Sam, we have another poll.
We do 2 display related things before we do newsletters, one question and one comment, but we had one question come through. How do you recommend using the lowest shelves in a display? And I was going to wait to answer it live, but we had a recommendation also come through in the chat that those low shelves, those low down shelves below the displays are great for restocking because nothing is worse than an empty display. And
Right.
you really want any staffer who's walking by to be able to fill those shelves back up for you. So if you've got a bottom shelf, stick anything relevant to that display down there. And then when anyone notices that something's been checked out or taken off, grab something from the bottom shelf and stick it back up
Yeah,
there.
that would
So a
be
great
true
way
of
to use those low
the
shelves.
bottom shelf of a display area. But in general, your bottom shelves, those can be a good place to lay out the oversized books that don't fit normally on your shelf, and you kind of lay them there so people can see them and pick them up. You could toy with setting up some books front facing. I've seen that done before, but again, the books are down on the bottom. And especially if you're in a community that has a lot of older people, it's difficult for them to stoop down that low. And even those of us that don't have that problem, who wants to get on your hands and knees to get a book off the shelf? So
Yes.
that's why it's usually discouraged to use those very bottom shelves.
Yes. We had
Okay,
someone
poll
talk
time.
about a display here that was like I suppose it fall in the category of almost not new anymore. So these are coming
Yeah,
off the new
that's
shelf.
great.
Go grab them. Someone else comments, which I think is interesting. I think the uncluttered and rule of 3 look is a good concept, but falls under the category of know your community. When we've tried this, our patrons ask us where our books are and if we're
Oh,
still buying new ones.
oh, interesting. Well, keep in mind that if you remember the slides from the very beginning that had the new books featured, they had a lot of new books there, but they had also clustered some groups of 3 in between. So that's kind of how you do. You don't just put out 3 new books and say, well, there you go, there's our rule of 3. You cluster those groups of 3 in the middle of your larger new books collection. Hopefully that makes
Absolutely.
sense.
All
All right.
right, on to newsletters and a poll.
Oh,
Shall I launch it?
please do. We want to know,
Okay.
does your library have a newsletter? Your options are, of course, or if you mean an email that's nothing more than straight text, then yeah, I guess we do. Or we're talking about starting one, and definitely nope.
Oh, we're getting quite a few no's here.
Yeah. Huh. Well, I'm glad we're doing this session and talking about this because it looks like the no's are winning. I'm going to go ahead and end this.
Sure.
And share results, you can see almost half of you said no, you don't have a newsletter. About 30% of you, a little over, do have one, and the rest of you are, kind of unsure. We sort of do, or we're talking about it. So I want to talk a little bit about newsletters right now. This is a sample of Ames Public Library. Ames being a larger library in Iowa, they do a top-notch newsletter. And I know that a lot of libraries can't replicate this, but I want to show it as an example of something you can take and consider implementing into a kind of newsletter that you could be able to do. A few things about Ames's newsletter. They produce it every month, so it's once a month, in print and digital format. It is multiple pages and provides information about programming for all ages in chronological order of when the program will be presented. Many of the pages include blurbs about, with your library card, you can access this awesome online resource, which I think is great marketing. You can see on the sample here that they're promoting their health, wellness, and nutrition database. So I think that's a great way to use your newsletter. Now, from a smaller library, Trier, also here in Iowa, they managed to produce a weekly newsletter. Director Diane Penfield, I just visited her with her a week or two ago, and she was actually working on her newsletter at the time. So I was really happy to use this example. Diane, I don't know if you're in the session here today, but if you are, feel free to type in the chat your thoughts about this. She says that her library recently switched to Email Octopus, and I've got the link there on the slide. She says if you have less than 2,500 subscribers and you send less than 10,000 emails a month, it is free. Did you hear that? Free, a newsletter platform. This email format is a running list, but with a few photos as well as clear headings for each section or announcement within the newsletter. It's very easy to scan through it and see the news, decide which specific sections to read, make notes of dates and events, as well as see the list of new titles the library has added since the last newsletter. So back to our super librarian marketing person, Angela Hirsch. She talks about, well, how do you ensure that people are actually reading your newsletter? Chances are pretty good that whatever resource platform you choose for your newsletter, you have a way to see not only how many people are opening your newsletter, but which people are or are not opening your newsletter. So Angela says, well, she provides numerous posts and even videos about newsletters. So I would encourage you to access this and read these yourself. But she also has some interesting things to say about how to entice people to actually read the emails or the newsletters that you send by email. I just want to read what she has here, what I made notes of. I first of all, I encourage you to watch this particular short video. It's only about 5 minutes long, but basically she says that your subject line should entice someone to open the email. Consequently, she says you do not want to use acronyms, nor do you want to include a boring phrase such as Anytown Public Library newsletter in the subject line. You're trying to convince somebody that the content in the email is worth their time to click, open, and read what you've sent. So your email subject line should be enticing. She says that numerous times. Again, no acronyms. Don't include the word newsletter. This is the place to be creative and fun and enticing. Again, Angela says to think of the subject line of your newsletter email as a tease. And as she says, spring newsletter from your library is not enticing. She also says to use an emoji, which I think must be advice coming from every marketing guru because I get a lot of emails from different groups that I follow that put lots of emojis in their subject line, and I would say use them judiciously. This was really interesting, some information that Angela shared. This is coming out of a 2024 blog from OptiMonster, which shows that nearly half of your email recipients decide to open your email based on the subject line. They don't care that it's coming from the library. They look at the subject line and say, do I want to open this or not? Half of them make the decision by your subject line. And almost 70% of your email recipients report your email as spam based solely on the subject line. So your e-newsletter's subject line is extremely important. Angela offers these 3 examples on her website. The one here has an emoji and says, your input matters. Please complete our survey. This one with the little music note emojis. Now, this sounds like a fun Tuesday night. That would pique my interest. And another one with a tree emoji that says our library tree is growing, which might pique your interest if you didn't even know the library had a tree. Angela also has another article here, another publication called Four Steps to Transform Your Library's Plain Old Newsletter into a Marketing Masterpiece. She says to add stories about your library and its patrons, and I have taught that for quite a while when I've talked about public relations, customer service kind of things. People respond more to personalized things about people they know rather than just generic things. Divide your publication into thirds is what Angela recommends, with the first one being about your collection or items that you have available. The second section is about programs and events that are forthcoming. And the third section is stories about patrons and staff. She also recommends having a call to action, like to learn more, email us at, or to register for this event, click here. She talks about the importance of taking the time to edit and review. Nothing speaks more poorly of a library than having really poor grammar and spelling. So double check your newsletter before you send it out. She recommends reading it aloud, and I have often taught this because you can see and catch things much more clearly when you're reading it aloud than when you're just skimming through it, reading it in your head. So make sure you edit before you send. Let's move on now to book talks. What, you may ask, is a book talk? Well, this is the definition coming out of the Vermont Department of Libraries. They say a book talk is a commercial designed to get someone to read a book. It's a way of selling your merchandise, a performance to get the audience excited about your book. And they also offer a whole list of reasons why public librarians should be book talking, not the least of which is because it increases circulation. And they say it also promotes your collection as the most effective way to motivate reading. I'm not going through all of these in the interest of time. You will have copies of the slides. Goffstown Public Library in New Hampshire has an example of book talks on YouTube. Now, these are older, so I'm wondering if perhaps they're no longer doing these, but they're still available, at least as of this week. I'm wondering, did this librarian leave? Did the library think the effort wasn't worth it? I'm not sure. They were getting about 50 views per episode, and I would want to know what their population is like. But if you note here, this one about librarian and bookseller team up for spooky book reads, it got 124 views. So the lesson learned from this, I think, is that you partner with another person or another organization outside of your library to do these kinds of promotions, and you'll get double or even triple the amount of viewership or participation. If you're not familiar with book talking, here are a few ways for you to learn more. The Pikes Peak Library District has a great resource on their teens page. Now, don't let that age fool you or dissuade you from looking at this information. You can see the various sections there under book talking tips. It's great tips, really great tips for all ages. Just a real reminder is that the book talk is not a book report. The key to book talking is to sell, don't tell. So again, think of your book talk as an advertisement or a commercial. And they recommend make the book talk fun, exciting, and suspenseful. Remember, don't tell the ending when you do a book talk, because nobody likes a spoiler. Oh, another, type in the chat here your responses. Where are some places you could do a book talk? Where are some places in your community that you could do a book talk?
We've got one person, and I don't know where Andrew's from, but mentions that they do book talks on a YouTube channel. So someone in Iowa at least going that route.
Awesome.
Social media, yeah. Ooh, in the coffee shop, on a Facebook Live, yeah, at the school, all great options. A local bookstore, this
Oh,
person says, at a
interesting.
civic club, yeah, anytime you're invited out to Rotary or Kiwanis,
Yeah.
assisted living, all great options, yeah.
Some of you have peeked at my slides, I think. Definitely you can book talk at the beginning or the end of a library sponsored program and have some books that tie in with whatever that program is. Here we go, the local group meetings like Chamber and Rotary. If you have a book club, you definitely want to book talk next month's selection to get them all excited about it. Any classroom visits you do or local senior living locations, online, in a blog. Book talks don't have to be talking like I am right now. You can write book talks and put those in a blog or in your newsletter. I want to talk about book talk, T-O-K. Yes, it's a thing. And yes, I know that TikTok has been in the news a lot lately. And who knows, maybe by the time you're watching the archived recording of this webinar, TikTok won't even be a thing anymore. But right now it is alive and well. One area of it is known as book talk. You can see the Wikipedia description of it on the screen. It's a subcommunity of the app TikTok that focuses on books and literature. Barnes and Noble includes a whole page on its website that is devoted to the most popular titles within various genres on book talk. And that includes genres like YA, adult fiction, romance, and nonfiction. So that site might be a good one to find suggestions for titles to add to your collection. In 2022, The Guardian had an article titled The Rise of Book Talk and featured the teen influencers pushing books up the charts. And I'm going to spend more on this than I probably should, but I think it's so interesting. The article quotes Kat McKenna, a marketing and brand consultant specializing in children's and YA books, as saying, these snapshot visual trailers are making books cinematic in a way that publishers have been trying to do with marketing book trailers for a really long time. But the new way TikTok users are creating imagery inspired by what they are reading is so simple and so clever. It's that thing of bringing the pages to life, showing what you get from a book beyond words. And the results? Here's a quote. I started reading again after 6 years when I came across Book Talk for the first time last October, said one of the people quoted in the article. And one of those book talk TikTokers is now regularly contacted by publishers who have realized that, quote, TikTok really does sell books, or in your case, would really circulate books. Now, many of these book book influencers that were featured in this article were 15 and 16 years old. But this article is from 2021. So those teen influencers are now new emerging adults, the Gen Zers, the ones that supposedly are hard to get into a library and supposedly aren't reading books. Wrong. This article is really an interesting read. And it quotes this person who said, I thought TikTok was ridiculous last year before the first lockdown. I really did think it was just for 14-year-olds, but Book Talk is such a lovely community. These are people who like the same books as me, and I can talk about these books that I like. It just seems a little bit magical. So check that out. Angela Hirsch, again, our super library marketing person, she shared a super interesting report about a survey conducted by casino.org, yes, a gaming organization, that asked TikTok users of Gen Z and millennial generations questions about reading. Specifically, this question asked these three reading-related questions. Are you reading more because of Book Talk? If yes, how much more? And have you ever read a book as a direct result of a book talk recommendation? Now, are you ready for this? As Angela Hirsch said when she reported on these survey results, hold on to your hats because 48% of the survey respondents in the US said they are actively reading more books because of their exposure to book talk, nearly half. And Americans said the platform resulted in a 60% increase in their reading activity. Just incredible numbers. Okay, moving on quickly here to shelving. Not enough time, Sam, just not enough time. Shelving, just a few notes. Do not cram every shelf full of books. Ideally, you want your books to be shelved only 3/4. I'm talking about your entire library. The shelving should only be 3/4 full. That will leave you some space to maybe put a front-facing title out, and it definitely allows space for browsing and selecting without all of the titles falling off the shelf. Avoid using the very top and the very bottom because most people can't reach the very top and nobody wants to crawl on the floor. And there you can see a good picture on the slide there that's marked as static shelving, but you can see the top and bottom shelves are empty. The Don't Shush Me librarian, she's a school librarian, and that's where these pictures came from. She has an article that discusses the difference between static shelving, which is the way most of us shelve our library books, and dynamic shelving, which has much more front-facing options. Now, while you may not be able to convert large swaths of your library to dynamic shelving like this librarian did there with the whole wall there on the picture, try to use front-facing titles throughout the collection. There was a study done back in 1996 by the Durham Public Library in North Carolina that proved their hypothesis that patrons would respond better to front-facing books rather than spine-facing books. The study resulted in significant differences in both the average number of circulations and the weekly circulation figures simply because they incorporated more front-facing books. So it definitely does promote circulation. This photo is from Library Furniture International. It shows an entire library wall with front-facing shelving. We often think of this type of shelving as being more for magazines. And some of you probably have this kind of shelving already in your library where you put your magazines. If your library is like a lot of libraries in Iowa, your magazine circulation is going down. So consider repurposing that shelving, not for magazines, but for some book displays or like maybe your new books. I helped a library in my district just recently do that. They converted their magazine display, just ditched that completely, and they've got all their new books on their former magazine shelves, and it's working very well. Here's a less expensive way to do some front facing of kids' books. I've seen this done quite a bit in libraries with children's materials, but I think front facing gets would have some benefits to be done with adult. I think it gets done more with children's books, but consider how you could do it with your adult collections. Demco has this article, you can see the URL there, 7 reasons to try front out displays in your library. So some of the reasons include better visibility, better browsing, and increases in circulation. Okay, so those were the primary things we were supposed to cover in this webinar, but we also said there is more. So let's talk a little bit about signage. We talked in last session 2 about nonfiction, how important it is to have signage so that people can better navigate your nonfiction collection. Now, these examples are ones that I had from another presentation I've done, and these are from children's collections. But that center photo there with the black signs and the white letters, that could work in an adult collection. Just imagine how nice it would be for your adults to be able to easily see, oh, here are the gardening books, here are the cookbooks, here are books about music, here are books about World War II. How can you use signage within the shelving collection to draw people's attention to particular topics within your nonfiction collection? Just having some big signage like these libraries do that indicate the major collection areas of your library can be valuable. This Don't Shush Me librarian again. I mentioned her earlier. She is a school librarian, but she has created a variety of templates that you can download for free. You see samples of them here. I especially like her graphic novel sign. I think that attractive signage not only helps patrons know where to go to find what they want, but it helps draw attention to collections that might otherwise be overlooked. So don't underestimate signage. If you have shelves that are similar to this picture in the lower left here with broad empty space at the top, you could also consider putting some chalkboard material up there and chalkboarding, chalking artistically, if you have someone who can do that, various sections of your library. I have seen that done at a bookstore. It was really attractive, and it makes it easy to change if you're doing some shifting of your collection. Virtual displays. These are some sample displays coming out of Hampton Bays Public Library in New York. This photo is from an older example, but you get the idea. They paired a popular fiction title with a nonfiction title that explores the real story. So you could create a physical display of a similar type, pairing popular historical fiction titles with nonfiction titles. So I really like this idea. Again, this was a virtual display that they did, but you could certainly do it physically as well. Displays can also apply to your website and social media posts. Some of you, I think, are already doing that. Think of those as online bulletin board displays. And this is an example of spooky books done right by the Sterling Rawdon Public Library, which I believe is up in Canada somewhere. Book discussions. If you don't currently have a book club or you have a struggling one, be sure to access the recording of Building and Maintaining a Book Club at Your Library, which the State Library presented last year. It will give you some really great ideas for getting a book club off the ground. And a book club is a great way to promote circulation at your library. One way to promote your collection is to take your book discussion club off-site. Many libraries now have book clubs that meet at local restaurants or breweries, and you can see some examples here. Des Moines doing Books and Bites at a local restaurant, and then the other two examples coming from outside of Iowa, doing Pints and Pages at local pubs and Books and Brews at a brewery. If you want to promote a specific genre or area in your library, maybe one that's under circulating, start a book club that focuses on that one genre. For instance, if you want to promote your nonfiction collection, start a nonfiction book club. You could call it the For Real Book Club, which is what I think one of the libraries I looked at online. I don't have their picture on here now. Sorry, I don't remember which library that came from. Falmouth Public Library, Massachusetts has what they call a narrative nonfiction book club. And their website, which you can see the URL there, includes all the titles that they have read since the group started in 2009. So that would be plenty of ideas for you to peruse for this type of book club, and maybe some recent titles and in the newer part of that list that you might want to include in your collection. If you think it would be too difficult to have a nonfiction book club, here are some standard questions ready-made for you. It's called Suggested Book Club Questions specifically for nonfiction. This comes courtesy of Huntley Area Public Library in Illinois. Try doing a One Book Reads program that's similar to the All Iowa Reads program that the state library furnishes every year. And we have book club sets available of the adult, teen, and kids titles. One Book Read programs are typically where you not only have everybody read the same book and discuss it, but you have complementary programming for a period of time that also ties in with the book. Sioux County and Greene County have done this for a very long time. And the other example there, I believe, is coming out of Urbandale. So lots of areas, lots of libraries in Iowa are doing this. So pay attention to what they're doing and contact them if you want to ask them any questions about how do you do this and what kind of complementary programming do you do. One Book, One Community is an ALA thing that they have an entire toolkit available on their website. And even if you don't do a One Book, One Community program, you can see on this sample page here on the slides that they have examples of related programming that ties to a book. So, for example, they read the book A Lesson Before Dying, and then the program included an interview with an exonerated death row convict. Maybe your book deals with gardening, so you have someone from the Master Gardeners come out and talk. So just those pairings is a good way to promote your collection. This was a website that I discovered in doing some of this research, but I liked it enough. I wanted to promote it. It's called Be the Change, double E, the Bee Cause Project. It supports pollinators, but they think that libraries are a great place to be the change in your community. They have a lot of programming ideas as well as book recommendations for kids and for adults that could help you present a program and promote books about bees as pollinators. So kind of a cool way to do it. And I will have to say that if you have programs coming up, put out a book display that ties in with the theme of that program as a way to promote not only your book collection, but the upcoming program. So you're planning to have a pollinator expert or a beekeeper come to your library to talk, put out a display like you see here on the slide to promote your upcoming program. And then, of course, have books available at the program that people can check out. Upselling, this is a technique that a lot of retail businesses do. Done correctly, it can be a wonderful service to make sure customers don't get home without everything they need to use with what they just bought, but done poorly, it becomes gimmicky. Well, we're not really required to upsell, but it's still a technique that you can consider as a helpful way of making sure your patrons know what you have. So you have somebody who brings 3 or 4 quilting books up to your counter to check out. You could mention, did you know we have quilting magazines? And if you don't have quilting magazines in your collection, you probably have a lot of quilting titles in the Bridges magazine collection. Bridges has 3,000 different magazine titles, so be sure to check those out and make sure that people know about those. Another example, promotional idea, some of you mentioned this in the chat earlier, and that is selecting books to help you observe special dates and times. This National Day calendar provides lots of national observances, assorted tidbits of observable information. For instance, did you know that March is National Nutrition Month? and lots of resources for lesser known National Day events as well as famous people's birthdays. So that would be a good way to highlight some biographies. From a school librarian, but equally useful information for public librarians, comes this handy list of library book display ideas for every month of the year. And I've highlighted only a few of them there that I think you could run with. The DEAR Day, that stands for Drop Everything and Read. So encouraging leisure reading and making time for reading. The Be a Millionaire Day, I could see you putting out books about retirement planning and investing, that kind of thing. So just be aware that there are lots of excuses for celebrating lots of events and ways to promote various sections of your collection. Back when I was doing youth services, I did a time travelers club for kids ages 8 to 12, and I highlighted different historical aspects and historical events, special months like Dairy Month or Beethoven's birthday and things like that. I think that would be a really fun program to do for adults as well. I think you could easily tweak it and make it useful for adults, not just in a programming idea, but also for book displays. So this website, Historica from Diomedia, has a listing of lots of events for this year and upcoming years that you can search. They also include stock photos you could use for publicity purposes. So, for example, in this month, did you know that March 24th is the 150th birthday of Harry Houdini, the magician? So, do you have any books about him at your library? Any magic books? Could you do a book club or program tied to books about magic or Houdini? This would be a way that you could use this website to get great ideas to promote your collection. Here's another resource to find out about monthly observances. And I just learned about this event a couple of years ago that November is National Nonfiction Month. This website promotes this day for kids, but I think it would be great if you ran with this idea for adults and had a nonfiction November and promoted some of your nonfiction collection, which typically does not circulate as well in our libraries as fiction. So that's why I'm kind of pushing it here. You could do Dewey, which one of our librarians, Kathy over at Huxley, did this with her book club for an entire year. Every month they took a different section of Dewey, asked people to just choose whatever you want from the 500s this month and bring it to the book club, and they talked about it. So that's a really cool way to explore Dewey. Tying in books to movies, you can easily do a search online for whatever year, books to movies, and you will get lots of results of resources that will provide you with upcoming, forthcoming movies that are going to be produced or TV series that are based on books. So doing displays that pair those or book clubs that have both the book and the movie, this is a nice handy web page from the Simon Fraser University Library. It includes classic to contemporary literature, biographies to popular fiction and graphic novels, all titles that have been converted into movies. And don't forget about how many of the classic books have become classic movies and promote those. Here are some displays, ways that you can promote books that are actually movies. I like the one that says read the movie or never judge a book by its movie. Great ideas. And one more that's so eye-catching, I just had to put it in here. And you can see that this and this last slide, the one on the right, they're actually bundling the book with the movie. So if somebody picks that up to check it out, you're getting 2 circs for one person checking those out. So that's a good way to increase your circulation a little bit too. We said we would talk about more very quickly. I realize the countdown for time is here upon us. These were a couple of ideas from a book bubbling that I shared earlier about funny library displays, but these 2 ideas aren't really displays, but there's some creative ways to help promote your print collection, especially the one there on the right. What should I read next? Well, draw out of our jar, and each color represents a particular genre, and it has a title on it. And of course, you would want to have those titles readily pulled and available for people who would participate in drawing out one of these slips of paper from the jar that you would probably have posted up by your circulation desk. Book bundling is a great way to increase circulation. Book bundling might be such as what Waukee Library does, where they tailor make a set of books for you. In this case, it's a set of 3 adult titles. Or the library could simply bundle a few titles together that are in a similar vein, such as cozy mysteries or books about cat owners or decluttering titles. Bundle them together, and when the patron they don't have to search for them on the shelf, and when they just grab it to go, they're actually checking out multiple books, multiple titles from that one bundle. Clive Library here in Iowa did something like this during the pandemic, but I believe they have continued it. They call it Take Out 10. the program was so popular that they have continued. As I said, I think it's a fun way for patrons to get a kind of a grab bag of library materials based on the patron's interest. And it definitely boosts circulation because each checkout is actually 10 checkouts. It is a curated curbside pickup, a stack of 10 items. The library staff put together a really cute video that you can access there from the URL and watch. Another more idea for a really creative contemporary way to promote your library's collection is to consider starting a podcast. Des Moines Public Library does this. This might be good for you if you're not comfortable being on video. Des Moines Public Library has this, and although the URL shows it's accessible from YouTube, it is only audio. So you don't have to worry about what you look like. You just have to do the podcast. Finally, don't forget to market your Bridges e-library collection. You should be thinking of Bridges as your e-branch location that is open 24/7 and available anywhere your patrons have access to internet connectivity to download titles. You definitely should be promoting this resource and reporting your stats to your library board every month as part of your collection statistics, your circulation statistics. The state library has ready-made resources available on the Bridges page of our website. In fact, that Bridges logo that I have there on the slide came from this list of downloadable promotional materials that you see there on the right. Whoops, went the wrong way here. If you click that blue tab up there that says Overdrive Marketing Materials, it will take you to this page from Overdrive, which is the parent vendor of our Bridges Consortium. All kinds of really cool, super professional looking little signage that you can use. You see samples of them there down at the bottom. And you can request a free Libby, which is the app that's used to download the materials from Overdrive, or in our case, Bridges. You can get a free marketing kit. So be sure to check out those resources. Very briefly, we talked about the fact that we were going to touch on recruiting active card holders. And I would love for you to put in the chat, how do you actively recruit library card holders in your community, in your library? I think that if you follow what we talked about in this webinar, you should see some increases in card holders because people are going to be saying, whoa, this is pretty awesome what the library has. I want to get a card. Make getting a card easy. I know of at least a couple of libraries in Iowa who no longer require a person to have their formal ID on them when they come to the library to get a card. They are issued a temporary card where they can check out a few items, and then the physical card is actually mailed to them, and that's the verification of the person's address. So anything you can do to make the sign-up process easy is a great thing to consider. Try if your ILS, your automation system, if it allows for off-site signups, try that. Take a laptop with you to the ballpark, to the farmer's market, and sign up new card holders there. Promote what your library card lets users do beyond just checking out books. I mentioned early on with Ames Public Library's newsletter that they do that. Here's what you can access from our online collection with your library card. Consider having a contest between a couple of similar sized libraries as yours that are in the area. Who can get the most library card signups this month? I have to do a shout out to Story City Library. I think I saw Tara, the director, here in the audience. I was just at her library yesterday, and she has access to this giant, and I mean like human-sized tall gumball machine. And she had a contest recently between her library and their branch location of who could do, I think it was over the most library card signups. And it was amazing, she said, how people signed up for library cards, with the prize being which library would get to have the gumball machine at their library for the next few months. So think about some contests that you might be able to do. Realize that September is National Library Card Sign-Up Month. Make getting a library card special. You can see a picture there from Northbrook Public Library, which is in Illinois. You can do this for all ages, not just for kids. Make it special when somebody gets a library card. Give them a little bit of swag. At least give them a brochure that talks about all the things they can do with their library card. If possible, and you have a local business that you can partner with, see if they will generate a discount for people who bring a library card. Maybe not always, but special occasions. Hey, during National Library Card Sign Up Month, if you come to our store and you show your library card, we will give you 10% off your purchase. That can be a great way to partner with a business, as maybe generate some business for them, and to get people to sign up for library cards. Samantha, what we have in the chat is ideas for promoting library cards.
Um, well, we've got two people who are running to noon meetings, and so if that's you, I recognize you need to take off. That is fine. Outreach and surrounding smaller communities, I think, is a great idea. Maybe a contracting city with you, or somewhere that doesn't have their own library. We've got one person who does a raffle for new and renewed library card holders
Interesting.
during National Library Card Month. I think is a great way to get people
Uh-huh.
in. Come in for come in, get your library card, and you can be entered into a drawing to win whatever it is that they're raffling off that
Fun.
year. So that's a lot of fun.
So, in conclusion, if you need to know more about collection development basics, we have two courses, one from our endorsement program that's all about collection management, and one that was a special one we did specifically on weeding collection cultivation. And as I said, session one of this series, Buy Better Books, definitely talked a lot about the basics of collection development. Our fourth and final session of Buy Better Books is coming up next week. Same time, we will be featuring a panel of librarians whose primary job is collection development. They are acquisitions librarians, and these specialists will show you how they save time and money purchasing books every day for their libraries. So register in Iowa Learns. There's my contact information if you have any questions. Sam, sorry we ran over a little bit, but that was a lot of information.
We did run just a little bit over. I'm going to put the registration for the practitioner panel into the chat. We'd love to see you there next week. I think it's going to be a really nice panel of folks talking about how they do collection development at their library. We did have another question that came through chat that was a good one about how much to weed versus how much to display and how those things tend to go together. But I would encourage you to check out some of the other stuff we've done on weeding, and maybe some of the earlier stuff in the series to try and get a sense of what makes sense for your community. I will say, I also saw one person say in the chat, the more front-facing books we added in, the higher our circulation went. And so if you're worried about having to overweed in order to make some display space, I think you'll find it does help your circulation numbers, even if the number of books on your shelf is lower. But
Right. The research shows that's true too. And I would say
absolutely.
talk with your district consultant if you have questions about weeding and what you should retain and how much and all of that. Your district consultant can help you with that.
Absolutely. Well, my thanks to Mary Ann for this webinar today. My thanks to all of you who have attended. I hope to see you next week for our panel. And everyone enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Thank you.
Bye.